Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you'd indulge me, I'd like to tell a little bit of a story today. The other day someone asked me what my favorite figure was in my collection, and it seemed a pretty straightforward question, but it sort of sent me down a rabbit hole about the very nature of my collecting and the reasons why we do it. And I think that for the most part, those of us that collect these things, it takes us back a little bit to a simpler time, to a more innocent time, to when things were easier, when all we had to do was use our imagination and escape into this little world that we had created inside ourselves. And I think about how lucky I was as a boy growing up in the 70s, being the youngest of four boys. Not only did I have my own toys to play with, but everything that my brothers had outgrown. My brother Ed and I were the youngest, and so we had the opportunity to spend the most time with these toys. And back then we had like these really cool G.I. Joe figures and Mego figures, which were like an 8-inch size version of G.I. Joe, basically. And Mego had had the license for every DC and Marvel comic hero out there, as well as things like Planet of the Apes and Tarzan and Star Trek, and which we had quite a few of all these things. And we spent so much time with these. And then when we started collecting comic books, I think I was about 8 or 9 years old when we first started collecting comic books, and we had the action figures that we could play out some of these stories that we read in the comic books, which was great. And so then we grew up and got rid of all the toys, and my friend Kat introduced me to the idea that I could actually start collecting toys and stuff even as an adult. And before you know it, I had my entire bedroom walls covered with Toy Biz figures from Marvel. Lots of Captain America, lots of X-Men. And I got a few Thor figures and gave them to my brother Ed, which he kind of frowned at, but he still took the figures and kept them. When my son was born and I started amassing a collection for him to play with of 6-scale Hasbro Star Wars toys. Every time my brother Ed would come over to visit, he would always make sure that he stopped in to see what Glenn's newest acquisitions were. And he would shake his head at me and say to me that I'm ridiculous for spending so much money. But then, as his son got a little bit older, I noticed a familiar pattern happening where I would go over to Ed's house and his son would have like the new Spider-Man toy, which was his favorite. But conspicuously, there was always another Thor figure. Thor became Ed's favorite and Captain America was mine. I thought it was kind of cool that our father fought in World War II and so did Cap, and Ed always liked that Thor was the most powerful, and I always liked that Captain America was just kind of like a normal guy but still found a way to do everything that the more powerful heroes would. So when the Marvel films came out and Hot Toys started to create versions of these characters, I tried to persuade Ed into buying himself a Thor figure because I thought it would make him very happy. Of course, he looked at me like I was crazy for spending that kind of money on a toy, and he would never think of doing that. So, being a good brother, I figured I need to enable him in some way. So I used the customizing skills that I had amassed over the years to start creating his own action figure that looked like him. And I needed a body to put it on. Now, Ed, being a large guy at 6'1" and anywhere between 225 to 245 pounds, at 49 years old, he was squatting 810 pounds. We had all these things that we had in common with comic books and movies and Benny Hill and Monty Python and weightlifting and martial arts. I needed a a figure, a base body that would do him justice. So Hot Toys at the time was putting out customizing bodies. So I picked up this figure. It was about $75. This very muscular figure that was designed for Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Terminator body. So I'm putting this together, and then in 2014, Ed was diagnosed with cancer. He had tonsil cancer, and so they went in and did some surgery and removed part of his throat, part of his tongue, and part of his soft palate. Did a skin graft and reconstructed everything, and put him on chemo. And a few months later, cancer-free, everything looked great. So I'm still diligently working on this figure for him, and then he goes for a checkup, and we find the cancer has come back. So now I really have to get this thing done for him. And so I call him up, and I ask if he's going to be home, and I can hear the depression in his voice, and he says, "Yeah, why?" And I said, "I just have something for you." So I didn't have a chance to do the box up the way I wanted to, but it was good enough. So I walk in, and his back's to me as he's watching the TV, sitting in his chair, and he got scar tissue in his neck, and he leans back like this, and he says, "What do you got for me?" And I hand him this box, and he opens this up, and there's silence for what seems like an eternity. And he turns and he looks at me, and he's got the biggest smile on his face. And he says to me, "This may be the coolest figure I've ever gotten." Of course, being a typical brother, he says to me, "I like the Thor's hammer you gave him," and I put him in street clothes. It kind of like resembled the coloring of Thor's outfit. But he says to me, "Can you maybe a guitar and an amp to go with it?" So of course I got right to work on that and made him a replica of his own Stratocaster and his amp. And I can only assume that his action figure probably played the guitar better than he did. But so the action figure sat in a place of honor in his living room, so that every time anyone walked in, they had to go over and check out the action figure and see it and pay homage to it. Unfortunately, the cancer proved just as strong as he was, and so he's in the hospital, and I'm trying to think of something that can brighten his spirits up. So I had drawn a comic book version of it, like an Irish version of a Thor character that he could, and it looks conspicuously like my brother, and he couldn't really talk very much at the time, but he smiled and gave me a big thumbs up, and my intention was to make a full comic book with this character and so forth, but unfortunately didn't get the chance. But yeah, this is my favorite figure in my collection. This is the one that kind of started it all going. Probably every one of these figures that I've made, I've been trying to recapture a little of that feeling. And today seemed like an appropriate day to make this video because today is Ed's birthday, and he would have been 57. So in a few weeks it will be 6 years since I last saw him. But at least I get to look at my shelf and see my brother there. Which brings me to the real point of this whole video, is that every one of us has some kind of ability, some kind of talent. God may not have given you the ability to sculpt or make an action figure or anything like that, but there's something that you have. And all of us have people that love us and people that we love. You don't know how much time you have, so make sure that you take that time and you tell them. You do something nice for them, whether it's cooking them a meal or bringing them something or dropping off a card. talking to them or giving them a hug. Because someday you won't have that. And you want to know that you took advantage of everything that you could. When I started making these action figures for the YouTube creators out there, I think it's always been a little bit of selfish desire in me to recapture a little of that sensation I got that day when my brother turned and looked at me and told me that this was the coolest gift he ever got. So I'd like to thank you guys, the YouTube creators that have done these reaction videos, and seeing that happiness in your faces, it brings me back a little bit and gives me a moment to relive that a little bit. But anyway, that's all I got. But keep it in mind. Look for those people out there that you care about, and do what you can to make them smile today. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.